let's take a look at the impact of a critical incident like that. Okay. I'm writing things down. All right. So my daughter, right. We obviously talked about that, how that affects her in the long term, being worried about her dad. And luckily I'm a therapist, right? So like when she has those moments, it's like, okay, how are you feeling? Are we feeling worried? What do we need to do about that? How do we resolve that? Are we feeling confused? Do you need to ask me some questions? We need just a little bit of reassurance. Do we need to call daddy? So I hope that I handle that appropriately. Um, so again, like affecting the kids, affecting me, right? Because it's like now, whenever I think the worst and he pulls one of the, shit, what, like, why are you always thinking the worst? If you call me a couple times, I don't pick up. It doesn't necessarily mean the worst. And I'm like, well, what about this time? So
Mhm.
like, even for me, being able to keep that anxiety in check a little bit. If we look at how that affected him, I mean, you can talk about stress and burnout. So
So you think
now
that somebody could live with constant anxiety while their significant other's at work? It is a constant state of fear while that person's away.
some people do.
Hmm.
Some wives that I talk to do. I mean, I'm in communication with, there's a couple different Facebook groups where it's spouses of law enforcement. There's like, I think like over 3,000 throughout the nation. We just kind of like talk back and forth, connect with one another. I even have a spousal support group. It's called Behind the Badge that I started. So we just kind of support one another. And I think that it's a lot easier to talk to people about those realities who are in it. I mean, if I talk to my friends, they can only empathize so much. Um, but talking to people who face those fears daily is a lot more effective. But yeah, there are people who I talk with some women whose spouses are on overnight shifts, and they, like, literally, we talk about like coping skills for sleep because they're waking up in the middle of the night checking their phone,
Hmm.
uncomfortable,
Hmm.
you know like, not to be corny, but we say like the sound of Velcro is like the best noise in the world, because after an overnight shift, when you guys come home, we hear the vest come off. It's like, okay, we're good for the day you know
Mm.
so yeah, people definitely live with that. I
Mm.
mean, I think that it's a real reality for us, and it's something, again, that some of us may not have directly chosen, right? Like, we choose our professions. We have a say, hopefully, in things like that, in our marriage, but we can't control what you guys are exposed to. We can't control what you guys go through. We can't control how you're going to react to what you go through. And I think that being in tune with that is half the battle. So number one, understanding the realities of the job and the nature of the job fully, having full transparency, which I don't think happens a lot. I think that you guys try to keep that. Um, I think that you guys try to keep us protected from that. Not so much within my marriage, because my husband understands where I've worked, what I've done, and my understanding of it already. So that we really have an open dialogue about it. But I do speak to a lot of other officers and significant others who are like, I am in the total fucking dark. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what their day looks like. And that leaves people very, very anxious.
How do you
Um,
start a conversation with a significant other before we get too far ahead out of that?
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, how do we start? How do we fix some of that?
Right. Have an open dialogue, man. Like, how was your day today? You know what? My day was hard. Why? Well, I had a call for a kid who is the same age as our kid who was being sexually abused by their mom. And that fucking bothered me. And I wanted to take that kid home. I mean, whatever, I'm just painting a picture. Right.
Yeah.
Or like, I had a DV victim who did not want to fucking cooperate. And I'm so frustrated because I can't understand why she would just Why wouldn't she just leave this dude? Whatever, you know?
What's a job's what's the job of a significant other or a spouse to in that dialogue, right? They're inviting it, but also to how are you reacting to that? Are you being more compassionate as well? I mean, listen, we're seeing the other side of it, but let's talk about both sides doing the
I
right thing
love
for each
that.
other. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Yes, because I have had an officer who did tell me that he did not like to speak with his significant other because she seemed very overly critical. You know, he worked as a correction officer, and it was like, well, you got shanked today because you should have been more aware of your surroundings, or you told me this story but you did this wrong, right? So his natural reaction was to talk to a coworker about it instead, because in the end, we always have our needs being fulfilled. So if I have the need to talk about something and I don't feel comfortable doing that with my significant other, I'm going to find somebody else to talk to about it. What I said to him was, I can guarantee that if your wife knew that she was missing out on an opportunity to feel more intimate with you, if it were explained to her in that way, like, hey man, I really, really want to talk to you about this, but I really feel like you're judging me. And I'm going to talk to somebody else, and somebody else is going to get that intimate part of me. If she were looking at it through those eyes, I think she might really consider the consequences of doing that and alter her behavior a little bit more. But we need to know what we're asking for, right? So know your needs, know what you're asking for. Hey man, I just want you to listen right now. Don't come up with any solutions for me. I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to listen,
Yeah, communication's important.
right? But you
Do
got
you
to know
think
what
that
you're
do
asking for.
you think that dials back to really choosing the right partner to be with as well?
Absolutely. And finding attunement. Like, I understand you, you understand me, right? So like there are some days, and again, this is in my training too, but there are some days, my husband has several kinds of days at work. So not only do I need to understand what his job entails, but I need to understand how he reacts to his job. That it's two parts, if that makes sense. So when he comes home from work, I can tell. I'm like an emotionally intelligent person, I like to believe, and we're in tune with one another. So when he comes home, some days he's quiet and he doesn't want to talk at all. He just wants to sit and be together. Some days he wants to talk. He'll sit down. He'll be like, I want to run this past you. Like, let me know what you think about XYZ. He's inquisitive. He wants to learn. He values my feedback, which I really like, right? It's because that's the micro communication behind that is I value your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some days where he does not want to talk at all and he will disappear when he gets home from work. We call it like his bathroom break, like wink, wink, like, okay, you're really going to sit in the bathroom for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I leave him alone because I know that he needs to decompress,
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason that may be. He just needs time alone. So being very in tune with those needs. And if you're not very in tune, then I'm going to ask your significant other, like I said, what do you need? If you need a couple minutes to be alone, spouses, don't take it personal. Don't get upset about it. We know that you've been waiting to see them all day. We know that your needs are important too, right? Because on their end, it might be like, you don't want to see me. I've been waiting all day to see you. And it's just really understanding and respecting that there are two different conflicting needs at that moment and how we're going to address both of them, if that makes any sense.
Do you think there are universal? I tend to think as I'm sitting here listening to this that to be a clinician, a therapist, you always have to take into account that probably, and this is just me guessing, I'm not a therapist, good communicator, and I think I'm fairly intelligent. Um, the the dynamic of one size fits all is probably a hard thing to try to implement into anybody. Giving practical advice, knowing different personalities, and there are other dynamics that people may be dealing with. Maybe dealing with people who are in a state of depression, anxiety. So, although these
Right.
resources may be one way to try to cope, I imagine it's not a one size fits all. Even trying to have this dialogue and have this conversation may fix for a lot of people, but I
Right.
would urge folks don't get dissuaded by trying to understand and resolve the issue just because this kind of application didn't work for you. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's why I really like with my trainings, I'm not like very didactic, like I'm not like very educational, I'm very much interactive
Mm-hmm.
because I work best with feedback. So yeah, like when I'm talking to you, these are very general applications, but that highly depends on specifically what's going on, the personality of your significant other, the emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligence of your significant other, their ability to communicate their emotions, and what kind of day they had too, right? So it's like you don't, there are a lot of different variables to consider.
See, what's interesting for me, I really do believe that I'm somebody who's very, very calm, willing to listen. I do not get aggravated or agitated. Look, Facebook shut our group down, right? 2 days ago. I'm telling you, my blood pressure didn't go up a tick. We've already slid everybody over, 10, now we're at 10,000 members. We got 6 people on staff right now who've been focused on putting those. So my point is we've, maneuvered to the new group right away. It takes a lot to get me worked up beyond the point where I can be understanding or willing to listen.
Mhm.
But I was in a lot of relationships without going into my, nobody wants to hear until you're drinking. You want to hear my fun stories from my 20s. But there are a lot of people that I engage with, women, who were not like me. And I think that if I had progressed forward into a relationship, as we're talking about relationships, with somebody who was not like me, I don't know if they would be willing to have the right personality or mindset to be understanding of this. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of people are, it's so interesting how I've deep dove into the world of mental health. This is how the Lord pushes me along into areas where he needs us to show up and do the work. Really getting very, very interested in learning a lot about it. And when you learn a lot about people who are, that could possibly suffering some kind of mental health issue, I think with that comes a lot of empathy. But you might not get that reciprocating back from them because they're not empathetic because of their mental condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if their depression is causing them to be isolated and withdrawn, that's going to come off as feeling like somebody's feeling very cold, right? If somebody feels highly anxious and that's coming off as
Mm-hmm.
being very irritable, nitpicking,
Mm-hmm.
um, th- but underneath that, when you peel back that onion, it's like you just have, you have somebody who's suffering from anxiety, let's just say. There's always
Mm-hmm.
a deeper level that kind of goes behind it, but we in relationships, I mean, and I call it the ripple effect, right? So we in relationships see that emotion and that behavior that results from the emotion, and we react emotionally back to it because it's hard when you're emotionally invested with someone to only think logically all of the
Mm-hmm.
time. It's really great to think with a hybrid of your brain and your heart. Like you want a hybrid of the two.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
want to operate only like logistically from the brain because that's going to come
Mm-hmm.
off as cold too. You don't want to only operate based upon emotion because that may not always be logical, right? Like if I am operating on emotion all of the time, that could look like somebody did something to me and I interpret and I felt disrespected, and I interpret that as an injustice that was done to me, when in reality the person was just correcting a behavior that needed to be corrected. If that makes any sense,
Mm-hmm.
so like operating on only emotion, we can turn our emotions into our reality very easily. So operating from a hybrid of the two, the brain and the heart.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to our channel or leave a comment below, and also like us too. It means the world to us.